overnight Vice President Harris in Michigan.
And in my opinion, has a very low IQ. But we'll find out about her IQ.
And we're back. I'm still your uncle, Fortune Benabali, here in the Smartans House studio in Ikorodu, Lagos. As American voters head to the polls, African leaders, businesses, and communities are closely monitoring the race, considering the policies that each candidate might bring to the continent. Kamala Harris especially has garnered attention for engagement and proposed initiatives aimed at strengthening U.S.-Africa relations. Over her term as Vice President, Kamala Harris actively promoted initiatives that support economic growth, democratic governance, and sustainable development across Africa. Her trips to key African nations and her collaborations with African leaders are seen as a signal of renewed U.S. interest in Africa, and we hope that it is sustained and possibly taking a notch higher. Trump's approach to many is viewed as more transactional, focusing on strategic gains rather than comprehensive long-term engagement with African nations. Trump has a statement where he calls developing countries a rather unpleasant name. You hear it. If he comes back to power, what would be the perspective now? Is it fair to think that that is still his position? Well, how about Harris? Let's listen to her. I am now joined by two Smartans, Cosmos Iwuchukwu and Grace Carlo. So, I'd like to start with you. Let's start with Grace. Grace, talk to us. What do you think is the view with regards to the U.S.-African relations, especially now that the presidential election is currently ongoing, and Trump's view?
Okay. Thank you so much, Fortune. So, see, Trump seems to be a numbers person. Whenever he looks at Africa, all he sees are incredible numbers that reflect a massive youth movement. And of course, when it comes to youth, there's always energy and innovation.
Definitely.
So now, if Trump wins this election, there are high hopes that his second administration will do a lot for us, for the U.S. relationship with African countries and organizations, and would likely unleash a very interesting youthful energy.
Really hope to see that.
Now, Trump is someone who loves fun. He has a very vast experience in sports, entertainment, and his administration will strongly support partnerships developing across the continent between the United States and Africa based on shared interests. So, based on some research, there is ample evidence that the US-China rivalry will become more contentious and intensify on the African continent, especially when it comes to the United States increasing focus in their critical minerals and supply chains. Perhaps the elephant in the room, when it comes to how a second Trump presidency might impact African countries, is how it will address the threat from these terrorists. A second Trump administration will be likely to confront these threats forcefully and frontally by strengthening US-African command and assist Africa interior and anti-terror efforts.
From what I got from what you said, it's almost like the heat is about to get intensified, especially with US, China, and African relations. And we definitely, can no way to see that if Trump gets the presidential seat. Now, over to you, Cosmos. What do you think Harris's position is, especially with respect to US-African relations? We definitely want to see that.
Thank you very much. You see, Trump and I go way back. Trump was losing my guy from the onset. But as time went on, the controversies, the propagandas, conspiracy theories, the news, records, rumors, and all of that, I started to have more light on certain things, especially Kamala Harris' stance on different issues and topics, and particularly her stand on the relationship between US and Africa. And it is actually very commendable. Now, considering the fact that, the slightest decision that could be made in the White House could effectively decide the fate and the livelihood of possibly millions or billions of people in Africa. And now Kamala Harris' approach to Africa is one that is aimed at fostering growth, supporting democratic governance, and countering the Chinese and Russian influence. During our visits, like you mentioned earlier, she visited Ghana, Tanzania, and Zambia. I think it was 20
very key African countries.
Yeah, and She emphasized creating long-term meaningful partnerships rather than solely providing aid. She also highlighted Africa's youthful population as a critical resource for innovation and economic opportunity, promoting a shift from aid to trade. Now, this is highly applauded because, for the very first time after a very long time, someone is seeing Africa for what it truly is. Not seeing Africa as a poor people seeking aid, but as a powerhouse, and it is actually very applaudable. Like I said, you get now. Harris also aimed at to fulfill U.S. commitment from the 2022 U.S. Africa Leaders Summit, which included a $55 billion pledge for digital transformation, gender equality, and climate resilience. And the administration has sought to position the U.S. as a reliable partner that respects African agency, contrasting its approach with China's infrastructure heavy influence. Everybody that is partnering with China is probably because of one rule or one building or one thing or another. So she's trying to demolish that kind of relationship, and it's beautiful. And I hate to say this, but I think Kamala seems pretty solid, if you ask me.
Before we start, casting all of our votes in a specific direction, the American voting public is the one that's going to do the decision. So, amazing insights that you shared, especially with respect to the US and African relations and Kamala Harris and Donald Trump's perspectives on this. You mentioned the transition from aid to trade. I think it's very important to see that there is that shift that's happening, that mental shift that's happening, so that people now, or these presidential aspirants, now begin to see that aspect, and it's very important. We want to see that shift happen, and we hope it's not just talk. We want to see more work and how it goes. So stay tuned as we continue to provide more updates on the US presidential elections as more Americans make their way to the polls to decide who takes the US presidential seat. Like I said, if America sneezes, the rest of the world catches cold. Thank you very much.